I think the most important thing is that markets have been driven by unusually low interest rates, unusually high liquidity, and large differences in growth rates. A lot of people have no idea what's going to happen in the markets, or that many of the bigger banks, the Federal Reserve, and other groups are presently lying. There's a little game going on right now between the Federal Reserve and the big banks, which we're going to look into more. It goes without saying that we will also talk about how stocks and cryptocurrencies are likely to move this year, thanks to some great information from Raoul and one of these experts, which I think you all need to pay close attention to. Hit that like button. Now that everyone has seen it, let's watch the movie. Trump's idea of re-regionalizing the global economy is another chance to make the world economy less dependent on a few big countries. We're not then. The box doesn't flow around as much as it used to. Because of this, you'll get more specific chances, like in the US or other countries, where people can go back to their own homes. Some of the running back to your home turf might have been forced. Along with the US, many other countries around the world have trouble with their budgets. Another thing is that many governments or countries around the world give money to the US. I also believe that some of that money should be sent back to home countries to help them meet their finances. Russell Napier, whom you may know, is talking about how money could be made to stay in the country, so I agree with that. However, I believe that as a money manager, the most interesting thing to do is not to try to guess what will happen, but to look at the market and see what it thinks will happen and where you disagree the most. And taxes are a good example of this. These fees for cars are going to be put in place when you look at some of the original equipment makers that make cars. General Motors is one of the ones that tariffs have hurt the most. General Motors thinks that about 40% of their cars are made in Mexico. Some other manufacturers, like BMW, which has a plant in South Carolina, and Subaru, which sells a lot of cars in the mountains of Colorado, there's a reason why those foreign companies don't really feel the effects of taxes, the places where they make their goods, etc. So I think you should look at some of these problems happening around the world and ask yourself what stock prices show. What does it really change? In answer to your question, I believe that money will come back to the country. I think that some countries might have to send products back to their home countries, and to be honest, I think that's going to cause inflation. In Mexico, General Motors gives $2.60 an hour for work on cars. In the US, auto workers get paid $26 an hour. You know that if you make General Motors make more cars in the US, they have to deal with a huge change in the cost of labor. So I think the answer to your question is that it will lead to higher inflation rates and higher costs of capital. So when the cost of capital goes up and inflation rates go up, the economy usually gets weaker. It makes a lot of sense when your dollars are worth less and getting them is harder. This is basically what a lot of top experts and analysts think will happen in the United States of America right now. They might cost as much as $15 to make the same things that used to cost maybe $5 to make if the jobs were brought back to the United States and a factory was built there. People in the US can't live on $5 a day, but people in many other countries can. This is because the US dollar doesn't have the same purchasing power as other currencies. The American people may or may not understand this, and I don't know how long it will take. If a lot of these jobs do come back to the US, they will probably feel it as soon as it happens. They will also notice that the costs of some items and services are going up. All of these things should get your attention because the last time this happened in the US, when inflation was high and it was harder to save money, the prices of stocks and digital assets actually went through a bear market. That was, of course, from 2022 to 2024 until ETFs came out and the coin market started to rise again. Taking all of that into account, you should definitely be ready for this kind of result. And luckily for you, there are lots of ways to make a lot of money if you pay attention to the right things. That's what we'll find out next and talk about next. Pay close attention. In the US, there have been big differences in trend growth between the Mag 7 stocks, which are big tech stocks, and the other 493 companies. Another big difference is the growth rate between the US industry and other markets. I think that most of the things that made growth really take off are now going in the opposite direction. You are taking away cash from the system. Interest rates are becoming more normal for you. Up until yesterday, central banks around the world were reducing their balance sheets. I think that the Fed slowed that down yesterday, which is a very interesting development. It's becoming clear to governments that they can't run budget deficits of 6% of GDP when countries are doing well and unemployment is still low. And those will be switched around. So all of this extra cash that was thrown into the system usually ends up in the financial markets. That looks like it's going the other way. Not only that, but a lot of the things that made America special seem to be going the other way. The United States was very profitable because of things like lower interest rates, lower taxes, and outsourcing. Now those things are also going the other way. And there are the extra factors of tariffs, which caused a lot of instability. But all of that is amazing from the point of view of picking stocks. In other words, markets that are more volatile are better. So far, this year has been great for people who pick stocks, even though most markets are less than ideal. I also think that most people who pick stocks are making money on days when the market is down because of how volatile it is. That being said, I think the biggest problem is that cash is leaving the system. I also believe that most people think the business world will return to where it was before the global financial crisis. I believe that is completely wrong. I think that after the great financial crisis, there was some inflation between 0% and 2%. As you can see, it went up a bit above that, but the range was from 0% to 2%. Our inflation rate was between 2% and 4% before the global financial meltdown, and I think that's a more likely range. And you should know that interest rates were very different from usual from the time of the global financial crisis until COVID. For now, we're not going to talk about that time. Most people who work in business today have only been through that. That makes them think it's okay. After that, they believe that going back to normal is like going back to the time before the global financial crisis. I don't see that. I believe that rates will be higher than what most people think. I think the system will have less cash on hand. And when rates go up, the cost of cash goes up, which is good for people who like to pick value stocks. Also, I want to make it clear that what they're saying is true. When the market is very volatile, there are many chances to make a lot of money by taking advantage of different situations. Crypto Crusaders is my trade group, and that's exactly what we do. You can join for free. The methods I have help us make up to 400% a month on our investments. And you can do the same for free if you just follow the 3-step process. First, join an exchange. To do this, click on one of these sites. Step 2, put in at least $100 worth of any coins. You can put down a lot more money if you want to make even more money. The third step is to send your email and swap user IDs. After that, you'll get an email with links to our Discord and Telegram channels where you can join in and make money in these markets. Again, you can make up to 400% every month. Because of taxes and other things going on right now, we may make a lot more than that in some months. Hit the like button and subscribe if you like what you see. That's all for now. I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.